You've been lied to your entire life. They told you that strength is in control, that power's in domination, that emotions make you weak. But the truth is, the real war isn't outside you, it's inside. The strongest men in history weren't the loudest, they were the calmest. They weren't ruled by anger, greed, or fear. They ruled over them. You want to master your life? Then first, you must conquer yourself. Because if you can't master your emotions, someone else will. They'll provoke you, manipulate you, distract you, and you'll call it fate. But it's not fate, it's slavery. You're chained not by circumstances, but by reactions. Every time you lose your temper, crave validation, or drown in anxiety, you hand someone else the key to your peace. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while the world burned around him, and he wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the foundation of emotional mastery. Your peace is not at the mercy of the world, it's a choice. Every emotion you feel begins as a story you tell yourself. Anger, envy, sadness, they don't appear out of nowhere. They're born from interpretation. Someone insults you, and you label it as disrespect. Someone succeeds, and you label it as unfair. Something goes wrong, and you label it as a disaster. But the Stoic doesn't react. He questions the label. Epictetus said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them." That's the difference between peace and chaos. Most people feel first and think later. The Stoic thinks first, then decides what's worth feeling. Emotional mastery begins the moment you stop taking every thought seriously. You must learn to pause before reacting. That single pause is the difference between the man who controls his life and the man controlled by it. When you pause, you see emotions for what they are, temporary waves, not permanent storms. You begin to notice that anger doesn't demand action, fear doesn't require retreat, sadness doesn't need escape. You realize emotions only have the power you give them. Most people suppress emotions, thinking silence equals strength. But Stoicism isn't about suppression, it's about separation. To suppress emotion is to fight it. To separate from it is to master it. True control comes when you can feel anger without becoming anger, feel fear without obeying it, feel pain without losing dignity. The Stoic doesn't eliminate emotion, he tames it. Seneca said, "A wise man is neither raised up by prosperity nor cast down by adversity." Imagine being that steady. When praise comes, you stay humble. When hate comes, you stay calm. When everything collapses, you stay centered. That's not detachment, it's discipline. And it starts with awareness. Next time you feel that familiar burn of anger, stop. Don't lash out, don't defend, don't justify. Just breathe and watch it. Count 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. And in those 3 seconds, you'll see the emotion lose its power. Because emotions are parasites. They feed on reaction. Awareness starves them. This is what Marcus practiced every night. He journaled his day, break down every emotional storm, and analyze it like a scientist. Why did I get angry? What was I trying to protect? Was it really worth it? You'll be shocked how small most triggers are when written down. Do this daily and you'll start to see patterns. You'll notice that what upsets you says more about your ego than about reality. That's how you build emotional muscle, not by pretending not to care, but by observing how much you do and learning from it. The Stoics lived by one law above all: control what you can, accept what you can't, and be wise enough to know the difference. Epictetus called it the dichotomy of control, and it's the backbone of emotional freedom. Most people live in reverse. They obsess over what's uncontrollable and ignore what's fully within their hands. The market crashes, someone betrays them, a plan fails, and instead of adjusting their actions, they drown in what-ifs. That's like arguing with gravity. The Stoic doesn't fight reality. He shapes himself around it. He doesn't waste emotion on what he can't change because that emotion could be used for what he can. He adapts, acts, and lets go. Marcus Aurelius started every morning reminding himself, "Today I will meet with interference, ingratitude, arrogance, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness, all due to the offender's ignorance." He expected chaos, and by expecting it, he was never surprised by it. That's emotional armor, anticipation, not avoidance. It's not that Stoics feel less pain, they just stop being shocked by it. Life is supposed to challenge you, that's its function. The difference is the Stoic sees pain as training. When someone insults him, it's an opportunity to strengthen patience. When plans fail, it's a lesson in resilience. When fear appears, it's a test of courage. Every emotion becomes a teacher, not a master. Because emotions are not your enemies, they're signals. Anger shows where your boundaries are weak. Fear shows where your courage must grow. Envy shows where your potential lies. They are messages, not commands. The problem is most people confuse feeling with following. The Stoic listens to emotion, but obeys reason. He decodes what the emotion is saying, learns from it, and moves on. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." So when you feel something powerful, rage, jealousy, grief, don't run. Don't escape through distraction, food, or screens. Sit with it. Ask it questions. What are you trying to show me? Why am I resisting this? What would happen if I just felt it and let it pass? That's how you reclaim control, through awareness, not avoidance. Imagine every emotion as a guest knocking on your door. You can either let it barge in and destroy your home, or invite it to sit down and explain itself. Reflection disarms reaction. When you reflect, you stop taking the emotion personally. You become the observer, not the participant. That's why Stoics journaled relentlessly. They turned emotions into words and words into wisdom. They understood that writing is not about expression, it's about extraction. You extract the truth from the noise, the signal from the storm. The more you reflect, the less power emotion has over you. You begin to see how fragile most triggers really are. You stop being dragged by your moods, your ego, your insecurity. You start seeing life clearly, as it is, not as your emotions paint it. And once you see clearly, peace becomes inevitable. Because clarity and peace are twins, you can't have one without the other. This is the essence of emotional mastery. Clarity over chaos, reason over reaction, order over impulse. Most people sell their peace cheap. They give it away for the smallest provocation, a rude comment, an unanswered text, a failure. They trade peace for pride, and it's the worst deal they'll ever make. Peace is the rarest currency in existence, and you lose it every time you let someone else dictate your emotional state. The Stoic guards it like treasure. When someone provokes him, he smiles, not because he doesn't care, but because he refuses to let chaos rent space in his mind. He knows that silence is stronger than outrage, patience louder than reaction. You are not obligated to attend every argument you're invited to. You are not required to explain yourself to every fool. You are not responsible for how others perceive you. Your only responsibility is mastery of yourself. That's the only empire worth ruling, because the man who can control his emotions controls his destiny. The The man who can't will forever be controlled by everything around him. So ask yourself, who commands your mind right now? You or your emotions? If it's not you, then this is where you begin. This is where the training starts. You cannot master your life until you master your reactions. And the first battle is always fought within, the prison inside your own mind. Break those chains, and no one will ever rule you again.
Part 2. The Discipline of Perception. The Stoic Art of Seeing Clearly. Life is not what happens to you, it's what you decide it means. Every moment, every encounter, every hardship is filtered through the lens of your perception, and that lens decides whether you rise or fall. The Stoics called this the discipline of perception, and they believed it was the difference between a slave and a free man. Because if the mind cannot see clearly, then it becomes its own prison. Think about it. Two men face the same storm. One curses the wind, trembles in fear, and waits for it to pass. The other adjusts his sails, watches the sky, and learns how to move with it. The storm is the same, only perception differs. That is the invisible line that separates the weak from the wise. Most people never realize that their suffering isn't caused by the world, but by their distorted interpretation of it. You weren't destroyed by that breakup. Your belief that you needed that person destroyed you. You weren't broken by failure. Your expectation that success was guaranteed broke you. You weren't defeated by rejection. Your illusion that you were entitled to approval defeated you. The event didn't wound you, your perception did. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." So, if your thoughts are chaotic, your world becomes chaos. If your thoughts are calm, your world becomes still. Perception is the first battlefield. The moment something happens, your mind leaps to judge it. Good, bad, unfair, disaster. But a Stoic pauses before judgment. He breathes, observes, and asks, "What is this, really?" That pause is power. That moment of delay separates those who react from those who respond. The fool explodes at the smallest inconvenience, while the Stoic stands still like a mountain, watching the wind scream past him. He knows emotions are visitors. They come, they go, but they don't define him. When anger rises, he studies it. When fear whispers, he listens but doesn't obey. When envy burns, he cools it with reason. That's how Stoicism builds an unshakable mind, not by denying emotion, but by mastering perspective. Every situation, no matter how painful, is an opportunity to practice perception, to step back and see clearly instead of drowning in noise. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The mind amplifies everything. Every insult becomes an attack. Every failure becomes a catastrophe. Every delay becomes defeat. But the Stoic strips away the exaggeration and sees only the raw event. You lost a client? Fact. You were betrayed? Fact. You were criticized? Fact. Everything after that is just narrative. The more stories you tell yourself, the more pain you create. The Stoic abandons story for truth, reaction for observation, noise for clarity. The discipline of perception also teaches humility. When you zoom out, when you see from the view from above, everything suddenly looks smaller, including you. Imagine lifting your mind above the city you live in, above the country, above the planet. From there, your problems dissolve into the background hum of existence. That fight you had yesterday, a dust particle in eternity. That failure you keep replaying, invisible from above. You realize that the universe doesn't revolve around your suffering, and that realization isn't depressing, it's freeing. Because the moment you stop taking everything personally, peace returns. Most people live trapped inside the cage of their own importance. They believe everything that happens to them means something about who they are. The Stoic laughs at that illusion. He knows he's just one wave in an infinite ocean, moving with the tide, not against it. When you think this way, life's events lose their power to wound you. You begin to flow with what happens, not fight it. You stop demanding that the world be fair or kind or predictable, because you see it for what it is, indifferent. And in that indifference, you find strength. But perception is not just about removing distortion, it's about choosing focus. What do you pay attention to? Because attention is the architect of your emotional life. The Stoic doesn't deny reality's ugliness, he simply doesn't feed it with energy. He sees the pain, but focuses on the lesson. He sees the loss, but focuses on what remains. He sees the obstacle, but focuses on the chance to grow. That's what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's not poetic optimism, it's tactical perception. The Stoic rewires his mind to see the benefit inside every blow. When life punches him, he leans in and asks, "How can this make me sharper?" When chaos hits, he says, "Good, another test." Because perception is training. Every event is practice for your mind to stay calm in fire. You must also understand that your perception is a weapon, sharpened by awareness, dulled by emotion. Each time you let anger cloud your vision, you lose precision. Each time you let fear exaggerate the future, you lose direction. Each time you let ego twist facts, you lose truth. The Stoic sharpens his weapon daily through reflection, journaling, silence, and observation. He replays the day each night asking, "Where did I see clearly? Where did I let emotion distort my sight?" Over time, that awareness becomes instinct. You start noticing when your emotions hijack reality. You feel anger rising, but you catch it before it spills. You feel anxiety forming, but you ground yourself before it grows. You no longer see through emotion, you see emotion itself. That's the highest level of Stoic mastery, not to suppress feelings, but to see them for what they are, fleeting movements of the mind. The discipline of perception is also about choosing calm over chaos. When others panic, you breathe. When others curse fate, you analyze it. When others drown in drama, you walk on water, not because you're superhuman, but because your sight is clear. You see that everything passes. No pain is eternal, no pleasure permanent. You start living in alignment with the rhythm of reality, no resistance, no denial. You realize that most of your suffering was self-created, built by attachment to outcomes, people, and illusions that were never yours to control. And when that realization hits, your perception cleans itself like a window after a storm. You start seeing beauty even in decay, lessons even in loss. The world doesn't change, you do. And because of that, the world finally feels bearable, even magnificent. So when the next storm comes, and it will, don't ask, "Why me?" Ask, "What am I seeing?" Because that's where your power hides. If you can see clearly in chaos, you'll act wisely under pressure. You'll walk through fire without losing your focus. You'll stop being at the mercy of life and start dancing with it. That's the Stoic secret, the power to see the same reality everyone else does, but differently. To look at disaster and find clarity. To look at pain and find peace. To look at death itself and find acceptance. The discipline of perception is not about escaping reality. It's about confronting it with eyes wide open. When you master that, nothing in this world can truly defeat you, because you've already conquered the mind that interprets it.
A Stoic knows that clarity without action is useless. You can understand every principle of philosophy, read every word of Marcus Aurelius, memorize every quote of Seneca, but if you fail to act, your wisdom is just decoration for your fear. The discipline of action is the third pillar of Stoicism, the art of moving forward no matter what stands in your path. It's not about rushing blindly, it's about acting with purpose, precision, and courage, even when the outcome is uncertain. Because life doesn't reward the thinker, it rewards the doer who acts despite doubt. The Stoics believe that hesitation is the first form of death. Every time you delay what you know you must do, you let weakness grow roots in your mind. You give fear room to breathe. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to move. That's why Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." The Stoic doesn't wait for motivation. He acts out of duty, not mood. He doesn't wait for perfect timing because he knows perfection is the coward's excuse. He acts when others freeze. He steps when others hesitate. He chooses forward motion, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Action sharpens the mind. It transforms theory into strength. Every time you face resistance and move anyway, you fortify your will. You stop being a victim of overthinking and become an executor of purpose. The world belongs to those who act, but not impulsively. Stoic action is not frantic, it's deliberate. It's rooted in reason, guided by virtue, and executed with discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That line cuts through the fog of indecision like a blade. Stop talking about what you should do. Stop fantasizing about who you could become. Just start moving. Want peace? Start practicing restraint. Want confidence? Start facing discomfort. Want strength? Start enduring hardship. Want freedom? Start doing the hard things you've been avoiding. The Stoic doesn't complain about how the world should be. He acts within the world as it is. He doesn't say, "I wish things were easier." He says, "I will become stronger." Every obstacle becomes a test, every hardship a classroom. When life pushes, he doesn't retreat, he adjusts his stance and pushes back. Seneca said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." That's not poetry, that's the formula. Every difficult thing you do rewires your nervous system to handle more. Every act of courage compounds into resilience. Every disciplined action makes you more unbreakable. The Stoic doesn't pray for comfort, he prays for endurance. To live the discipline of action, you must destroy one enemy: hesitation. Hesitation is a parasite that feeds on your focus, a whisper that convinces you to wait just a little longer. It disguises itself as caution, but it's fear in a mask. You'll tell yourself, "I need more time, more knowledge, more clarity." But what you really need is movement. The Stoic knows that clarity is born from motion, not the other way around. You act, then you adjust. You learn, then you refine. You don't wait until you're ready. You start, and readiness follows. That's the essence of courage. Acting even when you're uncertain. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology, that motion itself breaks mental paralysis. When the mind feels trapped, the only antidote is decisive action. No matter how small, movement dissolves fear. The longer you stay still, the more your imagination becomes your enemy. You start inventing outcomes that never existed. The Stoic kills those illusions by doing. But this discipline also requires humility. Not every action will succeed, and that's the point. The Stoic doesn't attach to results, he attaches to effort. He knows the only thing truly under his control is the action itself, not the outcome. That's why he acts without fear of failure, because even if the plan collapses, his integrity remains. Success or failure, praise or criticism, irrelevant. The Stoic asks only one question: did I do my duty? If the answer is yes, then the day was well lived. That mindset builds freedom from the tyranny of external validation. You stop being obsessed with how the world responds and focus only on what you contribute. You stop chasing perfection and start mastering consistency. And in that consistency lies greatness, because small disciplined actions repeated over years will make you unrecognizable. The discipline of action is also the antidote to procrastination. Every time you postpone, you reinforce weakness. You tell your mind that resistance is stronger than your will. The Stoic flips that script. He wakes and moves. He doesn't ask, "Do I feel like it?" He acts because it's time. He treats every day as a campaign, every morning as a battle between his higher and lower self. The weak man hits snooze. The Stoic rises. The weak man escapes into distraction. The Stoic returns to work. The weak man complains about obstacles. The Stoic turns them into opportunities. This isn't about toxic productivity. It's about alignment with purpose. You don't act to prove your worth. You act because your purpose demands it. Life is short. Time is finite. And the Stoic knows the clock is his most merciless teacher. Don't waste your time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. And yet, the Stoic's action isn't violent chaos. It's controlled power, like a lion pacing before the struck. He acts with calm intensity, not panic. He doesn't flinch from responsibility. When others wait for orders, he takes initiative. When others freeze in fear, he advances with quiet resolve. He doesn't move out of impulse, but intention. He measures twice, cuts once. And once he decides, he never hesitates again. That's why Stoic leaders were dangerous, not because they were loud, but because they were consistent. They moved when others stalled. They executed when others debated. They finished what others feared to begin. The Stoic believes that motion itself is a form of prayer, every disciplined act a declaration of alignment between thought and reality. The discipline of action also demands emotional control during execution. Most people act only when they feel like it. The Stoic acts especially when he doesn't. That's how he reprograms his mind to obey reason over emotion. When he's tired, he trains. When he's uncertain, he builds. When he's hurt, he works. Because he knows that consistency beats intensity. The Stoic is never chasing motivation. He's training obedience to principle. That's why he wins silently while others wait loudly. And when action fails, because sometimes it will, he doesn't curse fate. He extracts wisdom, adjusts course, and acts again. He knows failure is never fatal if you move again quickly. The Stoic has no time for self-pity. Self-pity is the rust that eats ambition. The Stoic doesn't sit and cry over what didn't work. He recalculates and strikes again. That's what separates him from the average man who spends his life thinking instead of doing. The Stoic lives in motion, fueled by reason, guided by virtue, and anchored in discipline. So when life throws you into uncertainty, don't freeze, move. When fear whispers, act louder. When doubt paralyzes, break it with execution. The Stoic knows that the universe respects one language above all: action. It doesn't care about intentions, plans, or promises. Only what you do. Because in the end, philosophy without movement is self-delusion. Stoicism without execution is cowardice dressed as wisdom. Act calmly, firmly, relentlessly, and you will find that the world bends to those who move while others talk. That is the discipline of action. To see what must be done and to do it without hesitation, without excuse, without pause.
Part 4. The discipline of assent. The art of taking control over your mind by deciding which thoughts you accept and which you reject. Because until you master your inner dialogue, you are nothing more than a passenger on the train of your own life, endlessly reacting to every impulse, every worry, every craving that flashes across your mind. Most people believe that thoughts are uncontrollable, that ideas simply appear and must be followed, that what you feel is what you are. The Stoics shattered this illusion. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by things, but by our judgments about things. And the first judgment, the one that sets the tone for all others, is whether you allow a thought to take root or dismiss it immediately. Imagine your mind as a city and your thoughts as visitors. Some knock politely, some storm in, demanding attention. The discipline of assent is the gatekeeper, deciding who enters, who lingers, and who is thrown back into the streets. Every time you accept a destructive thought, fear, anger, envy, self-pity, you feed a fire that burns through your peace. Every time you reject it, you starve the parasite and strengthen your sovereignty. The Stoic trains daily to notice thoughts as they arise, to examine them with ruthless clarity, and either affirm them if aligned with reason, or discard them if they threaten virtue. This practice done consistently transforms the mind from a chaotic battlefield into a disciplined fortress where only clarity, purpose, and truth reside. Every thought you assent to becomes a chain, and every thought you reject becomes a link in your freedom. Consider how often you have allowed a single negative thought to snowball into anxiety, despair, or anger. You replay it, embellish it, dramatize it, and suddenly you are enslaved to an event that may not even matter. The Stoic does not eliminate thoughts, that is impossible, but he observes them as passing clouds and determines which he will give his energy to. Anger arises, he does not lash out. Fear arises, he does not flee. Self-doubt arises, he does not obey. He questions, is this true? Is this useful? Does this serve virtue? If the answer is no, he discards it immediately. He knows that thoughts are not commands, they are suggestions, signals, options, not obligations. Your inner narrative is yours to edit. By exercising this control, the Stoic creates an inner environment where reason reigns and emotional chaos cannot survive. This discipline also extends to the way you interpret external events. Every observation your senses makes is filtered through countless assumptions, biases, and emotional distortions. The discipline of assent trains you to catch these interpretations before they dictate action. Someone criticizes you. The initial thought may scream injustice, but you pause. Is this true? Is this helpful? The Stoic rejects the false narrative and only accepts what is factual and actionable. Life throws insults, failures, and misfortune at you constantly, but you do not have to carry every one in your mind. you choose which to acknowledge and which to release. This is the essence of mental sovereignty, to treat thoughts as tools rather than tyrants. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that he could not control others, only his own judgment. Every thought accepted or rejected becomes a declaration of freedom. Every moment spent mastering assent strengthens the mind's armor. The discipline of assent also requires vigilance, because the mind is subtle and most people surrender without realizing it. A fleeting envy, a hidden resentment, a tiny self-pity thought, these infiltrate quietly and grow if unchecked. Stoics become hunters of their own mental intrusions. They catch them early, examine their validity, and immediately assent or dismiss. This is why journaling and reflection were central to their practice. By writing down thoughts, analyzing them, and questioning their truth and usefulness, they trained their minds to recognize patterns of error and automatically reject unhelpful thoughts before they can take root. Over time, this transforms reflexive reactions into deliberate responses. The mind becomes a vigilant sentinel, only permitting what aligns with reason and virtue, while discarding the rest. The discipline of assent also teaches the power of language in shaping thought. Words and labels can inflate or deflate emotions. When you call a setback a disaster, your mind escalates anxiety. When you label an insult as meaningless, your mind maintains calm. The Stoic chooses words carefully, not to avoid reality, but to interpret reality in a way that serves reason rather than chaos. By controlling the story you tell yourself, you prevent emotional enslavement. The narrative becomes a tool, not a trap. You realize that much of human suffering is the result of blindly assenting to internal narratives that exaggerate harm and minimize virtue. By exercising restraint, you reclaim power over how the day, the world, and your life are perceived. Assent also connects directly to freedom from passion. The Stoics distinguished between impulses that arise naturally and destructive passions that arise from misjudgment. By assenting only to reasoned thoughts, you prevent passions, unchecked anger, obsessive desire, fear, and grief from controlling behavior. You learn to let the mind respond rather than react, to act out of judgment rather than compulsion. Over time, this makes your mental life peaceful, your decisions deliberate, and your responses aligned with virtue. You are no longer tossed by every thought and feeling, but stand as a deliberate presence in the world, unshaken, clear, and free. In practice, the discipline of assent becomes a habit of mindfulness that saturates every action. You notice the thought before it acts, you evaluate it before it takes hold, and you choose alignment with reason over impulse. It is a lifetime of training, and each thought mastered compounds into strength. A man who consistently rejects destructive thoughts and assents only to those that serve virtue is effectively untouchable by the trivial disturbances that ruin ordinary lives. Fear, anger, grief, and jealousy cannot bind him because he never gave them permission to rule. Each day he hones the skill, sharpening his mind like a blade until reflexive clarity replaces chaos and automatic peace replaces reaction. This is why the Stoics believe that true freedom is internal. You may be surrounded by chaos, disaster, and suffering, yet no one can harm you as long as your mind remains sovereign. The discipline of assent is the ultimate declaration of ownership over your inner world. Thoughts are fleeting, control is lasting. Emotions are temporary, virtue is eternal. And by choosing which thoughts to assent to, you are building the unshakable fortress of the mind, impervious to every insult, every failure, and every misfortune that life can throw at you. It is not easy, nothing of value ever is, but it is the cornerstone of mental freedom, and once mastered, no external force can dominate you. The mind that governs itself governs the world within and faces the world out, unbowed, unmoved, and absolute.
Part 5 dives into the discipline of desire, the cornerstone of Stoic freedom. Because nothing enslaves a person faster than unbridled craving, unchecked attachment, and endless yearning for things beyond their control. Most humans live in a constant state of want, believing that happiness lies in acquisition, more money, more status, more approval, more comfort. The Stoics knew that this is the path to endless frustration. They taught that the root of suffering is not external scarcity, but internal attachment. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." The discipline of desire is the art of separating true needs from arbitrary wants, of training the mind to desire only what aligns with nature and reason, and to remain indifferent to everything else. When you desire what is outside your control, you place your peace in the hands of chance. When you desire only what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, your virtue, freedom begins. The Stoic doesn't reject pleasure or ambition. He refuses to be ruled by them. He tastes life fully, but is never addicted to its sweetness or paralyzed by its bitterness. Every desire has a chain attached, and every chain restricts movement. Wealth brings power, but also anxiety. Recognition brings status, but also dependency. Comfort brings ease, but also laziness. The discipline of desire teaches you to analyze each craving. Does it serve virtue? Does it lie within my control? Does it strengthen my character or enslave it? If the answer is no, the desire must be restrained. You practice voluntary restraint daily, choosing small discomforts over indulgence to train the mind to be content without excess. This is why Stoics would practice fasting, cold baths, and voluntary simplicity, not for suffering's sake, but to internalize that happiness is not in external abundance. By doing this, you internalize the truth that no matter what life takes from you, your mind can remain untouched. Freedom is not in owning everything, but in needing nothing. Desire also corrupts judgment because it clouds perception. When you crave something desperately, your mind exaggerates its value and minimizes risk. You act irrationally, sacrifice integrity, and compromise virtue to satisfy fleeting wants. The Stoic combats this by distinguishing between what is truly necessary and what is superfluous. You need food, shelter, companionship, and purpose, not fame, fortune, or applause. The world tries to convince you otherwise, but the Stoic recognizes the trap, that endless pursuit of what is unnecessary is the fastest route to misery. By mastering desire, you stop chasing illusions and start living in alignment with reality. You stop letting the world dictate your happiness and begin creating it internally. This discipline also teaches resilience in the face of loss. If you have trained yourself to desire only what is under your control, you are immune to disappointment from external events. You can lose wealth, status, relationships, or comfort without losing your peace, because you never anchored your happiness to them. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. The discipline of desire is the engine behind that philosophy. The conscious effort to align your wants with what the universe allows and to release attachment to what it does not. Desire, when disciplined, becomes a tool for focus rather than a source of suffering. But mastery of desire is not suppression, it is liberation. You don't pretend to want nothing, you choose what is worthy. You allow yourself to pursue goals that serve growth and virtue, but remain indifferent to outcomes that you cannot control.
You enjoy the journey without being enslaved by the destination. You seek pleasure in moderation, knowing it is transient, and face discomfort willingly, knowing it strengthens character. Every day offers practice, resisting impatience, refusing gossip, controlling appetite, overcoming laziness. Each act of restraint is a step toward self-mastery. You become a person who acts out of reason rather than reaction, who moves through the world untethered by craving, who experiences joy without addiction and peace without dependence. The discipline of desire also teaches gratitude. When you stop endlessly craving, you begin to see abundance in simplicity. A warm meal, a kind word, a moment of quiet. These become treasures, not because life is generous, but because you have trained your mind to recognize value without excess. You no longer take life for granted. Every experience is richer because you are no longer blinded by insatiable want. Stoic contentment is not complacency. It is the ability to flourish under any circumstance, to find power in restraint, to remain steady when everything else fluctuates. Ultimately, the discipline of desire is the secret to internal freedom. It removes the chains placed on you by your own cravings, detaches you from outcomes beyond control, and anchors happiness in what is truly yours, your mind, your choices, and your virtue. When mastered, it transforms life from a battlefield of endless wants into a garden of deliberate, meaningful engagement. You no longer chase, you no longer fear, and you no longer depend. You act because it is right. You enjoy because it is present, and you endure because it is necessary. This is the Stoic path: to master what you desire, to be free from what you cannot control, and to live in perfect harmony with reason and nature.
Part 6 explores the discipline of endurance, sometimes considered the second facet of action, but in Stoicism it holds its own sacred place because it is not enough to act. You must endure, persist, and persist again, even when the weight of the world presses down. Life will hit with relentless force, challenges will accumulate, setbacks will multiply, and people will betray, disappoint, and abandon you. Most fall because they mistake the first blow for the end, the first obstacle for impossibility. The Stoic knows better. Action without endurance is like a sword without steel, flashy but brittle. Endurance is the backbone of every virtue. It is the capacity to face pain, discomfort, uncertainty, and failure without surrendering the mind, body, or spirit. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That power manifests through enduring what cannot be avoided while continuing to act with reason and purpose. Every hardship becomes a training ground, every obstacle a lesson, every loss an opportunity to fortify character. Endurance is not passive, it is active perseverance guided by reason. It is choosing to continue moving forward when the body screams stop and the mind whispers despair. To master endurance, the Stoic begins with the recognition that discomfort is inevitable. Cold, hunger, pain, fatigue, rejection, humiliation, these are universal experiences. The question is not how to avoid them, but how to bear them with dignity. Seneca emphasized voluntary discomfort as a training method. Fasting, cold exposure, silence, and early rising to condition the mind to remain unshaken in the face of involuntary hardships. Each act of deliberate discomfort builds resilience, making the mind flexible yet unbreakable, like tempered steel. You learn that suffering is not inherently destructive, only unprepared minds suffer. By choosing to endure small hardships daily, you train for the larger trials life will inevitably impose. The Stoic does not cower. He embraces struggle as the forge of greatness. Endurance also demands discipline of attention. Most people crumble because they allow their minds to wander into fear, resentment, and despair when facing adversity. The Stoic, however, focuses on what is within his control: his choices, his actions, his attitude. Pain, injustice, and misfortune are constant companions, but suffering is optional. You can resist reality and be miserable, or accept reality and remain strong. Endurance is the skill of distinguishing between the two. Every moment of perseverance is a mental victory. Every act of continued effort despite resistance compounds into unshakable strength. You no longer complain about hardship because you see it as the soil from which your character grows. The discipline of endurance also intersects with time. Stoics think in long horizons. Immediate pain is minor when measured against the span of a life devoted to virtue. A single insult, a failure, or a disappointment is nothing more than a flicker in the larger tapestry. You endure because each trial is a lesson, each obstacle a teacher, each setback a stepping stone toward mastery. When you view life from this lens, perseverance is no longer tedious, it becomes inevitable. You act because that is your duty, you persist because that is your nature, and you endure because it is necessary. Short-term discomfort loses its power when placed in the context of the lifelong pursuit of excellence. Furthermore, endurance is not passive suffering, it is active engagement under pressure. The Stoic does not simply tolerate difficulties, he responds to them with courage, rationality, and steadfastness. He does not crumble under criticism, fail under expectation, or retreat under hardship. Instead, he observes, calculates, adapts, and pushes forward with integrity intact. Challenges are not walls to stop him, but weights to strengthen him. The body grows stronger with resistance, so does the mind. The more you endure, the more capable you become of handling future adversity without fear or hesitation. Endurance compounds. Importantly, the discipline of endurance requires detachment from outcome. The Stoic acts, perseveres, and persists, but he is not enslaved by results. Failure is not humiliation, it is data. Success is not vanity, it is confirmation of principle. The external world is indifferent. It is the mind that must remain disciplined. By separating effort from outcome, you free yourself from despair and frustration. Every trial survived without compromising virtue strengthens your inner citadel. You become invincible, not because life bends to you, but because your mind no longer bends to life. Endurance also cultivates patience. Modern culture worships instant gratification, but the Stoic thrives in delayed results. Greatness is a slow accumulation of disciplined actions over time, and only by enduring can you reach it. Patience is not idleness,
It is a form of active waiting, a deliberate alignment of effort with time, knowing that meaningful results are rarely immediate. The Stoic works tirelessly, consistently, and persistently, trusting the process even when visible rewards are absent. Finally, the discipline of endurance reinforces moral courage. Life will demand you stand firm in the face of injustice, ridicule, and opposition. To do so requires the ability to tolerate suffering without surrendering principle. Every act of ethical endurance strengthens the soul. By mastering this discipline, you transform setbacks into stepping stones, pain into wisdom, fear into focus, and life itself into a laboratory of virtue. You become unshakable, unwavering, and unstoppable. And when the next storm comes, as it always will, you do not merely survive, you endure, you act, and you rise, stronger, wiser, and more aligned with the eternal principles that govern a life of Stoic excellence.
Part 7 explores the discipline of assent, a principle central to Stoicism that teaches mastery over your beliefs, judgments, and mental interpretations. Because without control over what you accept as true, no external freedom or action can bring lasting peace. Life constantly bombards you with events, opinions, and impressions, each trying to dictate your thoughts, your emotions, and your reactions. Most people accept these impressions blindly, believing that whatever flashes in the mind must be real, important, or worthy of energy. The Stoic knows this is a trap. Epictetus famously said, "Don't believe everything that comes into your head." The mind is a marketplace of ideas, and the discipline of assent is the gatekeeper. It allows the useful, rejects the harmful, and ensures that every judgment aligns with reason, virtue, and reality. This is not a passive philosophy. It is active, deliberate, and relentless. Every thought, every impulse, every emotional reaction is examined, tested, and either accepted or discarded before it gains power over your life. Imagine your mind as a vast fortress, and each thought as a messenger seeking entry. Most people allow every messenger to pass unchecked, bringing rumors, false fears, and emotional chaos. The Stoic scrutinizes each message. A thought arises, fear of failure, envy of another, regret over the past, desire for wealth. He pauses. He asks, is this true? Is this necessary? Does this serve virtue? If the answer is no, he refuses assent. He recognizes that destructive beliefs are not external forces, but creations of his own mind. By rejecting false impressions, he maintains sovereignty over his inner world. This discipline transforms the way you interpret reality. External events no longer dictate your emotions. Your judgments do, and you control them. The discipline of assent also teaches the distinction between what is in your control and what is not. Most suffering comes from assenting to thoughts about things beyond your power. Wealth, reputation, others' opinions, natural disasters. By refusing to accept judgments about what you cannot control, you remove unnecessary pain from your life. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. You cannot always control what happens, but you can control what you believe about what happens.
Every judgment you accept has the power to either enslave you or free you. Choosing wisely is the essence of mental mastery. This discipline requires relentless vigilance. Subtle thoughts, fleeting impressions, and small judgments accumulate into habits of mind that shape your entire life. Stoics practice constant reflection, journaling, and self-examination to catch these early. They question assumptions, challenge narratives, and ensure that only rational, virtuous, and true beliefs gain traction. Over time, this builds an unshakable internal citadel where external events cannot intrude. You become immune to rumor, envy, and self-deception because you no longer accept false judgments. The power of assent also extends to emotional regulation. Most people are swept away by anger, fear, jealousy, or anxiety because they have assented to thoughts that exaggerate harm or diminish virtue. The Stoic observes these impulses, recognizes them as impressions, and withholds assent. Anger becomes a signal to reflect. Fear becomes an opportunity to prepare. Envy becomes a lesson in gratitude. By controlling which mental narratives are allowed to govern behavior, you convert potential chaos into deliberate action. The mind becomes disciplined, the soul steady, and the emotions aligned with reason. Furthermore, the discipline of the assent shapes ethical living. Every moral decision requires assent to what is true, just, and virtuous. A Stoic refuses to act on gossip, false assumptions, or misleading information. He checks his impulses against reason and principle, ensuring that every choice reflects virtue rather than passion. This rigorous mental filtering cultivates integrity, wisdom, and courage, because thought without judgment aligned to reason leads inevitably to error and moral compromise. Practically, this discipline manifests as daily mindfulness. You constantly observe your mental impressions, pause before agreeing to their validity, and consciously decide what to accept. A fleeting thought of resentment, examine. A desire for approval, examine. A fear of loss, examine. Only what passes the test of reason and virtue is allowed to influence action. This habit transforms life into a deliberate engagement with reality rather than a reactive, uncontrolled series of events. Finally, the discipline of assent leads to inner freedom. When you refuse assent to false or destructive beliefs, no external circumstance can dominate your mind. You are calm in chaos, composed under pressure, and undisturbed by criticism or loss. The mind becomes sovereign, impervious to manipulation, rumor, or emotional hijacking. Life continues in its unpredictable course, but you are no longer a prisoner of appearances or impressions. By mastering assent, you build the ultimate Stoic fortress, a mind that perceives clearly, judges rightly, and acts virtuously, free from the tyranny of unexamined thoughts and enslaving beliefs. This is the essence of Stoic power, the freedom to decide what you accept as true and to live in accordance with reason, virtue, and the immutable laws of nature.
Part 8 focuses on the discipline of action in its most elevated form, where movement, choice, and effort are not just reactive, but fully aligned with virtue, reason, and purpose. In Stoicism, knowing what is right is meaningless unless you execute it with precision and consistency. Life rewards decisiveness, not contemplation alone. And the Stoic understands that wisdom unacted upon is a kind of paralysis. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly emphasized that philosophy is not to be studied merely for intellectual satisfaction, but to guide behavior. Don't just say you have read, but act as if the principles are written in your bones. Every thought, insight, and reflection must culminate in action. Otherwise, the mind becomes a library of theories that never touch reality. This discipline of action is about transforming insight into movement, planning into execution, and potential into reality. The Stoic acts regardless of comfort, popularity, or fear. He recognizes that obstacles are inevitable, and that inaction is the default path of most men, who wait endlessly for the right conditions, the perfect timing, or the approval of others. True power comes from acting anyway, anchored in principle rather than emotion. Every step taken with reason and virtue strengthens the character and expands influence. Inaction, conversely, reinforces weakness, nurtures doubt, and invites regret. The Stoic's calendar, mind, and habits revolve around deliberate effort. He organizes his day not around fleeting whims, but around the tasks that cultivate strength, virtue, and mastery. Each action is a brick in the fortress of the soul. Purposeful action also demands mastery over distraction. The modern mind is flooded with endless inputs, social media, gossip, idle curiosity, and trivial debates. Most of these erode attention, waste energy, and weaken character. The Stoic ruthlessly filters action to align with higher goals. He does not scatter effort across shallow pursuits. He focuses on what advances virtue, wisdom, and tangible progress. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that trivialities should not divert him from duty. It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. Focused action is therefore not only efficient, but moral. It honors the fleeting nature of life by ensuring effort is spent where it matters most. Another key element of this discipline is embracing discomfort as a teacher. Stoic action is rarely easy. It often requires confronting fatigue, criticism, failure, and resistance. To act virtuously is to act in alignment with reason, even when the body or mind resists. Voluntary discomfort is training. Involuntary discomfort is testing. Each obstacle endured without compromise strengthens resilience, sharpens judgment, and builds character. Stoics deliberately expose themselves to challenges to internalize the truth that the measure of a man is revealed in how he navigates difficulty, not in comfort or ease. Action is therefore inseparable from endurance. To act consistently is to forge an unbreakable mind. This discipline also reframes failure. The Stoic acts knowing that results are never guaranteed. Success is external and largely outside control. Effort and integrity are internal and entirely under command. Every completed action, even if it appears unsuccessful externally, strengthens virtue internally. Failure is merely feedback, and each misstep is a lesson in refinement. The Stoic does not lament misfortune, but adjusts strategy and persists. In this way, action becomes iterative, reflective, and relentlessly forward-moving. No paralysis from doubt, no stagnation from fear, just the continuous application of reason and effort toward what is right. Moreover, the discipline of action trains the mind to act ethically in a chaotic world. It is easy to act when conditions are perfect. True Stoic action occurs when integrity is tested. When others cheat, compromise, or manipulate, the Stoic maintains his course.
because action aligned with virtue is never conditional on circumstance. Every decision becomes an exercise in moral courage, every initiative a testament to character, and every effort an affirmation of self-mastery. He acts not to impress, not to gain favor, not to avoid discomfort, but because doing the right thing is intrinsically valuable and necessary for the cultivation of the soul. Consistency is the final pillar of this discipline. Stoic action is not sporadic heroism, but steady, deliberate practice over a lifetime. Each day offers countless micro-decisions, each an opportunity to align thought, judgment, and behavior. By consistently choosing virtue in action, in words, deeds, and habits, the Stoic builds a compound effect of moral and practical excellence. Over months and years, this produces extraordinary results. A mind that remains calm under pressure, a body disciplined in endurance, and a life whose impact is proportional to the sustained alignment of action with reason.
Part 9 focuses on the discipline of endurance, the essential Stoic practice of facing life's inevitable hardships with courage, resilience, and unwavering commitment to virtue. Life is not designed to be easy, and anyone who waits for comfort, certainty, or safety will spend their days imprisoned by fear and indecision. The Stoic recognizes that pain, loss, betrayal, failure, and uncertainty are constants, and that true freedom comes not from avoiding these trials, but from enduring them with reason and integrity. Endurance is the backbone of Stoic philosophy, because all other disciplines, action, assent, desire, rely on the ability to withstand pressure without compromising principle. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminds himself that obstacles are not obstacles at all, but opportunities to exercise virtue. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Every hardship, when met with endurance, becomes a tool for growth, a teacher, and a forge for strength. To practice this discipline, the Stoic cultivates a mindset that transforms adversity into instruction. Pain is examined rather than lamented. Setbacks are analyzed for lessons rather than indulged in as complaints. The body and mind are tested voluntarily through discomfort, fasting, physical training, silence, and voluntary exposure to challenges to internalize the truth that the mind remains free even when circumstances are harsh. By confronting small hardships daily, the Stoic conditions himself to face larger ones without fear or despair. Endurance is therefore not passive suffering, it is active, deliberate, and empowering. The mind learns that it is stronger than every external pressure it will encounter. Endurance is also inseparable from control over perception. Life may inflict injury, insult, or loss, but the Stoic governs his response. He refuses to allow events outside his control to dictate his peace or virtue. Anger, grief, fear, and resentment are considered voluntary mental reactions that can be accepted or rejected. By choosing reason over impulse, the Stoic converts every adversity into an opportunity to reinforce inner strength. This is why Epictetus taught, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." Endurance begins with the recognition that suffering is often magnified not by reality, but by unexamined belief and reaction. By mastering perception, he neutralizes much of life's external power to harm him. The discipline of endurance also demands persistence in action despite obstacles.
The Stoic does not merely survive hardship, he continues to act with purpose, courage, and virtue even when results are delayed, uncertain, or invisible. Persistence in the face of difficulty strengthens both competence and character, transforming challenges into milestones of personal growth. This creates a feedback loop. Endurance enables action, and disciplined action strengthens endurance. Over time, the Stoic becomes unshakable, capable of facing storms with composure and transforming even suffering into a deliberate choice to refine the self. Patience is a key element of this discipline. The world operates on its own schedule, and many things we desire, mastery, recognition, fulfillment, arrive slowly or unpredictably. Endurance teaches the Stoic to sustain effort without immediate gratification, to trust the process, and to maintain virtue regardless of how quickly the external world rewards him. He understands that the accumulation of small, disciplined actions under pressure compounds into extraordinary results. A life built on fleeting comfort and avoidance cannot achieve greatness. A life disciplined through endurance cultivates strength that becomes internalized, permanent, and self-sufficient. Moreover, the discipline of endurance enhances moral courage. True virtue is tested under pressure, and only those who can withstand suffering without compromise can consistently act rightly. Every ethical decision made in adversity fortifies the soul. Every instance of patience, tolerance, and rational judgment under pressure strengthens the mind's resilience. The Stoic is not merely enduring pain, he is converting it into a tool for mastery, a measure of character, and a proving ground for excellence. The Stoic also practices acceptance as part of endurance. Not every difficulty is solvable, and not every suffering can be removed. By accepting what cannot be changed and focusing effort where it is effective while maintaining composure in the face of the uncontrollable, the mind preserves energy, maintains clarity, and avoids unnecessary anguish. Acceptance does not mean passivity. It means redirecting effort where it is effective while sustaining composure in the face of the uncontrollable. This balance between effort and acceptance defines the mature Stoic's approach to hardship. Act decisively where possible, endure stoically where necessary. Ultimately, the discipline of endurance builds a life of unshakable fortitude. The Stoic transforms adversity into a teacher, discomfort into a trainer, and pressure into power. He develops a mind that is calm in chaos, a character that is consistent under fire, and a spirit that remains free despite suffering. Every hardship becomes a stepping stone, every trial a lesson, and every struggle an instrument for internal mastery. Endurance is the bridge between theory and practice, between knowledge and virtue, between fleeting comfort and enduring freedom. By mastering this discipline, you become impervious to life's assaults, capable of persistent action, and aligned with the Stoic ideal of a life lived fully, courageously, and wisely.
Part 10. The Stoic Way. Integrating all disciplines into a life of mastery. Part 10 concludes this journey by showing how all Stoic disciplines of desire, action, assent, and endurance converge to create a life of unshakable mastery, profound peace, and purposeful action. Life is not about isolated exercises in virtue. It is about integrating these principles into every thought, choice, and moment.
The Stoic does not merely control desire to avoid suffering, nor act virtuously in bursts, nor endure hardship passively. He unites these practices into a seamless system where every decision, impulse, and reaction aligns with reason, nature, and virtue. Imagine a mind, body, and spirit functioning as one machine, each part trained, disciplined, and calibrated, impervious to chaos, distraction, and despair. This is the Stoic ideal, a fully integrated life where inner freedom and external action coexist. Integration begins with self-awareness. Each morning, the Stoic reviews his purpose, his duties, and the potential challenges of the day. He anticipates obstacles and rehearses reasoned responses. He reminds himself that his desires must align with what is within control, that his judgments must be disciplined, that his actions must be deliberate, and that endurance will sustain him through inevitable trials. By uniting all disciplines, he creates mental clarity and moral consistency. Every distraction is filtered, every impulse examined, every choice evaluated for its alignment with virtue. This integration transforms ordinary routines into exercises in mastery. The Stoic also cultivates perspective. Life is fleeting, unpredictable, and often harsh. Yet he remains unshaken because he has internalized that external events are neutral. Only his judgment gives them power. Loss, failure, betrayal, and pain no longer dictate mood or action. Instead, they become opportunities to exercise resilience, courage, and wisdom. By integrating all disciplines, he converts obstacles into growth, setbacks into lessons, and suffering into insight. His mind is a fortress, his will a blade forged in adversity, his character unassailable. Action becomes effortless when disciplines are integrated. Desire is moderated, so effort is not wasted chasing illusions. Judgment is disciplined, so every decision is rational and aligned with purpose. Endurance ensures persistence despite fatigue, criticism, or misfortune. The Stoic acts consistently, decisively, and virtuously because every moment is an expression of training. He does not wait for ideal conditions or perfect clarity. He moves deliberately within the reality he faces. Integration turns philosophy into life itself, not something studied but lived. The ultimate outcome is freedom. Not freedom in the superficial sense of wealth, comfort, or avoidance of difficulty, but freedom in the deepest sense, sovereignty over mind, emotion, and action. The Stoic is free because he is no longer enslaved by desire, fear, anger, or opinion. Every challenge is met with reason, every temptation with restraint, every thought with discernment, and every action with integrity. External events cannot disturb him. His peace is cultivated internally and carried outward. Happiness, fulfillment, and purpose are no longer contingent on the world, but arise naturally from disciplined living. Finally, the Stoic's life becomes a model of excellence. By integrating all disciplines, he achieves harmony between thought and action, reflection and effort, endurance and joy. Daily practices, journaling, reflection, purposeful action, and voluntary discomfort compound into a character that is resilient, clear-minded, and ethically unassailable. He inspires not through words, but through the visible consistency of living principle. Life is not perfect. Pain persists and obstacles endure, but the Stoic's mastery transforms the experience itself. Challenges become fuel, setbacks become training, and existence itself becomes a testament to reason and virtue. As we end this video, remember that Stoicism is not theoretical. It is practical, relentless, and integrative. It is a system to conquer the mind, master desires, act with integrity, and endure life's storms. Each discipline reinforces the others, creating a feedback loop of growth, freedom, and excellence. By practicing Stoic principles daily, you cultivate an unshakable mind, a disciplined body, and a virtuous soul. Your life becomes deliberate rather than reactive, empowered rather than enslaved, and meaningful rather than chaotic. The ultimate lesson is simple. External circumstances cannot control you. Only your judgments, actions, and desires can. And when mastered, they forge a life of true freedom, unwavering resilience, and Stoic excellence. Live these principles, integrate them fully, and you transform not only your mind, but your entire existence into a fortress of reason, courage, and virtue. This concludes the 10-part Stoic guide, from controlling desire, mastering thought, disciplined action, and enduring hardship, and integrating all principles into a coherent life of mastery. You now have a blueprint to practice daily, refine relentlessly, and live intentionally. Stoicism is not a theory to admire. It is a life to embody.